Okay, so we're going to do hopefully 3 little vignettes today. The first section will be on meditation. The second section is going to be on astrology, and the third section will be on science, picking up what we did last time. So with that, we're going to start with the meditation piece. And what I have here is this book called Radically Happy by Phakchok Rinpoche and Eric Solomon, okay? And so this is a very nice, comprehensive book that Bruce pointed out, and I would highly recommend it. It's very readable. And I'm just gonna skip around in this for this class to give you some idea of what's going on.
But it's a good idea to order your own copy.
Yeah, it's very readable. It's got very nice graphics for this thing, very nice modern stuff. So what I'm going to do is
it's very accessible.
Yeah.
Who's the author?
It's called Radically Happy by Phakchok Rinpoche, Phakchok, Phakchok Rinpoche, and Eric, ERRIC, Eric Solomon. And
it's very user-friendly.
Yeah, and they put a lot of time into this, and I think it's quite accessible on dealing with things like meditation. So I'm just going to go to the very end, okay? The very end, and it says here, here's a daily plan for radical happiness. Like after you read the book, you know, what should you do? I read the book, okay? So if you've been working on the basic and interconnected happiness exercises, that's great. You'll be able to draw on your experience for the radically happy daily plan. And at the point when you begin to fully engage in a plan to be radically happy, you should be able to be consistent about practicing daily. The daily plan will need more of your time than the other 2 plans, since you're going to bring the practices of basic and interconnected happiness together. So it's best if you can spend about an hour a day on this. So here we go. What will we do in an hour a day? Well, the first thing is we start in the morning of the day, and you wake with awareness. Wake with awareness. As soon as you wake up, don't immediately jump out of bed. Instead, as the first moments of conscious awareness begin to take over from the world of dreams, notice how your mind is. Whatever thought, emotion, or sensation comes, as soon as you notice it, look toward the knowing quality, okay? So just pause for a little bit before you jump out of bed. And then suggest doing a morning meditation of, say, from 20 to 45 minutes, to really get you centered and have a good day ahead of you. So you start by creating space, which takes maybe 5 minutes, and you practice using thoughts and emotions as an object, or the awareness meditation, which is 5 minutes, which they covered in here. And then practice experiencing and sharing joy, which is another 5-minute exercise. So we have awareness meditation and experiencing and sharing joy, and using thoughts and emotions. Okay, so these are all things. What Marjorie and I end up doing is we do these guided meditation things, but that's just what we do, okay? So we don't follow this, but we do end up doing it for 20 to 45 minutes.
But we are planning to start working with this book over the summer. So.
Right. So you want to alternate between these 2 approaches: the using your thoughts and emotions as an object, or going to awareness meditation. You just want to alternate back and forth. We alternate back and forth between, for example, we like Hildegard von Bingen, with these wonderful chants. And the chant, there's so many chants. She wrote so much music that there's no way you could begin to exhaust, replicate the chants that are out there on YouTube. It's just a huge amount of chants. So we're nowhere near making a dent in all she's done. Then
But we listen to them at the end of our meditation in like no particular order, just kind of spontaneously for as long as we like, until one of us usually has to get up to go to the bathroom. That's really what happens. But it's usually like 3 or 4 of them. And it's just beautiful. It just gives you a different kind of mellowness for entering the day.
I have a question.
yeah.
Adding this to what you already do, would you suggest one day do what you ordinarily do and then maybe do this another? Is there any problem of adding this in to what you do?
You should do what works for you. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I would say try a few different things.
yeah, this is a class. We're just trying to expose you to some of these other things. But if it doesn't work for you, don't.
And
it
if you
doesn't work.
already have
Yeah.
a practice, don't rock that boat.
Yeah.
I
So,
would say,
yeah.
Stick with that. And I would say add this at another time and then see about experimenting.
Right.
I
But-
do something called morning pages that I used to do, and then I stopped. I'm just getting back to it now. You're supposed to do it before you become really verbal, before your left brain is fully engaged, and just like do stream of consciousness. But I like to do these other meditations first. But I'm kind of going back and forth with which one I'm going to do first and see which one really works better. And I'm just trying not to be too rigid with myself. But we usually do one guided meditation, and then I'm asking for a break of silence, and then another guided meditation, and then the Hildegard. And that's kind of our routine. But we're going to start mixing it up, just because sometimes you get into a rut, and it's good to try new things, but you can always go back if you miss the old way. So I'm always back and forth. Do I want to meditate first, or do I want to do that stream of consciousness writing first? And I haven't really found my answer yet. That's just an example.
The key thing, the takeaway here is simply, when you get up in the morning, just pause for a second to group. And then the other takeaway is to meditate, to start the day off, to clean all the cobwebs out and make sure that you're centered. And that means for maybe 20 to 45 minutes. And then drilling down from there into things that are more concrete. So that's the morning side of this daily plan, okay? Now, in the afternoon.
And if we all have the book, the more we get on the same page, so to speak, the more we can share practices and compare notes and,
Or you can add it in to further your meditation along.
Right.
Yeah. So in the afternoon there, whenever you remember or you encounter something, you end up taking a mini break, okay? You look toward the knowing quality of the mind, and then you let go. And then after a few moments, you make the aspiration for everyone to be happy, and you do 3 breaths, 3 measured breaths. So you're maintaining your sense of awareness as you continue to do whatever it is you're doing. But they just recommend taking these little mini breaks, in part because, as you get into the day, there's more and more insanity taking place, more and more craziness. And so it's good to, just have a little mini timeout and just step back and then get back into the battle. And then they recommend having an evening meditation for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I usually do this when I'm in bed, but that's me, okay? And then the idea here is to review
And
your
you can
day.
stay awake to do it?
What is this?
And you can stay awake to do it? Or you use that to
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
asleep?
it helps me to go to sleep.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you're cleaning all the whatever. You know,
The detritus from the day.
yeah, you want to take an honest look. You're reviewing the day. Take an honest look at your actions. Were they in harmony with the interconnected nature of reality? Did you make decisions and act in a way that was more or less likely to have an authentic experience of yourself and the world? Is there something you can do to reduce the power of unhelpful habits? Is there a habitual response that keeps occurring, getting in the way? Can you begin to anticipate where it might arise? Imagine that tomorrow you catch yourself and you look toward awareness instead. And then, so you're reviewing your day, then we go in and we reflect and celebrate. Reflect on how, despite a lifetime spent mostly chasing self-absorbed distraction, the noise of daily life, you spend time being aware. Celebrate the few moments you were aware, kind, patient, and generous, or at least didn't succumb to habitual negative ways of reacting. And then visualize yourself doing it again tomorrow. So that's the reflect and celebrate side of things. And then sleep with warm-heartedness. You go to bed with an attitude of gratitude that you made some worthy attempts to practice. As you begin, as you hit the bed, feel the present moment of awareness. You notice the sheets and blankets, etc. Feel your heart, your breathing, you know, look at all this, and then you can go to sleep. Well, that's what they recommend. I do my thing. So that's the daily plan here. So we haven't talked about the meditation piece yet, but I'm just trying to show you where it would fit in, in a daily routine. There's a couple of things that they put in here at the very end of the book. Just some simple aspirations is what they call them. First one, may your mind become flexible like flowing water. May your mind become flexible like flowing water. May your actions be responsive to the needs of others, like an experienced host helping guests. May you maintain like space. Space is immutable, it can't be harmed, and within space, things can appear. May the light of happiness, this present moment of warm-hearted awareness, shine through. The light of happiness shine through. So those are the aspirations that you should try and get out of this. Now, Bruce, by the way, do you want to add anything to this since we're running through this? Any comments?
Hector Rinpoche was my teacher for quite a while. He was giving courses in Cooperstown, New York, for about 8 years, and I went to them every year. And he really knows his stuff. He was one of my favorite teachers. He was incredible. So I highly recommend him. He really knows what he's doing. He really knows what he's talking about. And in terms of Buddhism, he's a meditation master, which is a big deal. So I really recommend him for sure.
Yeah.
He's a lovely man. Lots of sense of humor and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. Stephen, we've got you on here with your iPhone. and with your computer?
Got us in stereo?
Do you want to kill the iPhone?
I will be doing that
Okay,
one step at a time.
understand.
It's good to overlap.
Let's see, where did I put this? Oh, here it is, here. So what I'm going to do now,
We do discuss this ahead of time, believe it or not. We try to kind of choreograph it, but we don't
Here it
always
is.
stick to that.
this is a book that I got. And this is a chapter out of the book. I have a Kindle, so this is what you're seeing here is my electronic book here. And this chapter is called Samadhi, the unity of consciousness and existence. So that's what I think we're trying to aim toward. That's our aspiration here. And so let me just see one thing. Problem with this is, yeah, okay, we can do it. We go back here. Good. Okay, according to the biblical story, God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. This story is actually about the chakras. Everything manifests itself through the 7 chakras, and the 7th is the pure divine consciousness of itself. The 6 chakras represent all forms of existence, but the 7th one, which is your crown, the top, is their transcendence. In the human experience, transcendence is the most profound cognition, completely objective awareness. But unlike all the other states of lower consciousness, transcendence is not based on any activity or the contents of the consciousness. It's the total surrender, which the Buddha so adequately described as the ceasing or the extinction, nirvana. So it's logical because the consciousness of unity is the consciousness of the quantum field, in which everything already exists timelessly. We experience here only individual manifestations of all the potentials of the quantum field in the illusion of space and time. The return into it is therefore possible only through surrender, the ceasing and extinction of all the illusions. This coming back is also an illusion because from this divine consciousness, which is the whole, we're never able to get out of it. It is everything and it is ourselves. It is the source of our consciousness. It is one more reason why you get into it with the surrender only. Chan Buddhists express these in words. When the mind is still the wrong viewpoint, the wrong viewpoints disappear all by themselves. So you've gotten rid of all the noise, all of the wrong chatter all around you. In order for the surrender to be possible, it's necessary to overcome all the illusions. In order for the illusions to be overcome, takes the most powerful potential of pure consciousness combined with the highest potential of energy. That is the impact of consciousness. The relationship between consciousness and its effect, the energy or prana, is depicted in the classical yoga as the 2 paths and their trajectory, the Ida and the Pingala, that start at the first chakra, and then they cross their paths and intertwine around every single chakra on their way to the 6th chakra, the Ajna, where they once again join to enable the consciousness of unity of the 7th chakra. Ida and Pingala actually represent the polarization of energy based on which it works. The polarization of energy is actually the polarization into the consciousness and action. The consciousness is non-Hertzian and the action is the Hertzian frequency. They're simply making an allusion to the frequencies they're talking about here don't follow what we would find in electromagnetism. They follow a different realm here. the entwining of trajectory of the consciousness and the energy of its paths around every chakra points to the fact that the full awareness of the potential of every chakra is necessary, of every level of consciousness, of all the possible states and experiences of existence, to balance the objective consciousness, which is represented with the central trajectory, the Sushumna, which is between the Ida and the Pingala, and joins the first to the seventh chakra. Sushumna actually represents the balance of consciousness and energy of Ida and Pingala. It connects the consciousness and the existence with all the chakras, with all the states of consciousness, and with all the possibilities of existence. So here we see kind of yin and yang, the balancing here. This is the what Marjorie just showed. Here's our base chakra going out all the way up to our crown chakra at the top, and they're intertwining. The Ida and the Pingala intertwine around the Sushumna, this path that connects all of these chakras here. And this is what Ron Cowan had. He remember we saw sketches he made of every single one of these chakras. So therefore, it's very important to emphasize once more the significance of unity of consciousness and energy, the unity of thoughts and deeds, awareness and life. In the traditional graphic display of Ida and Pingala, it's clear that they cross and join in each chakra, which points to the merging of energy or being and consciousness in each chakra. The joining of consciousness and energy activates each chakra in the proper way and sublimates us to the final awakening or realization, which is the seventh chakra. Every chakra is unrealized only because of the lack of unity of consciousness and being, or energy, because of their imbalance. The lack of unity and balance in our consciousness and actions, energy, consciousness, and being is the only factor that traps us in the lower states of existence, the only source of negativity and suffering. When it's pointed to positivity or toward the positive energy that sublimates us, the key factor is the unity of our deeds or energy with our consciousness, their balance and harmony. This unity is simply realized by doing whatever we're doing with our whole being, even the most trivial action in the here and now, and to be objectively aware of everything we do as a witness. To be objectively aware of everything we do, that's the key thing here. The non-Hertzian principle of consciousness. This principle, as the unity of energy and consciousness of Ida and Pingala in Sushumna, was expressed in words long ago. Be what you are, be here and now, and awaken yourself. And so it goes. So I just tried to give you this to touch with some of the things we dealt with earlier in terms of with meditation. We're trying to link to this through these chakras and be able to again be completely aware of what's going on. But in many ways we've lost consciousness, where we're no longer having this mind that's messing everything up. Bruce, you want to add anything?
Well, the main thing is that this is actually not my personal experience. I mean, a lot of people have a very, very profound unfoldment and experiences with chakras and so on. But what wasn't really my unfoldment. So I'm not certainly not an expert on it.
Yeah, I would say this particular person, this was their hobby horse. They wanted to go ride this, okay? And that's what I said, whatever works for you is the most important thing. So,
Right.
but
So
I'm just giving you this as a different takeaway.
So I have a question, actually. How does this relate to Kundalini?
Kundalini?
To the
Yes,
Kundalini.
Kundalini, if you want to pronounce it. Yep. I mean, it seems that those two spiral paths are like the snake unwind. If you could unwind them and get a
Right.
direct path, then the chakras will become completely empowered together as opposed to circling each other. And it's just having seen the graphic tonight, it was a thought that came to mind.
Well, Kundalini is fundamental in terms of the whole central channel. There's 3 channels, one on the left side, one on the right side, and the one in the middle. And there's really some profound exercises. In Buddhism, they have Dumo. Dumo is where there's the chakra just below the navel, and that evokes energy and heat. And then you move it up the central channel, and you have all these various bliss experiences. And all these kinds of practices are very purifying for the consciousness. And they're a very important path for some practices.
But there is a practice, I believe, of trying to unwind what is referred to as the snake so that it becomes straightened through meditation. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's from what I know of the exercise, and I've tried some of them, but it wasn't part of my main practice, is that it's actually far more complex than that. But the general idea is the energy going up the central channel and purifying consciousness, because difficult patterns from the past leave kind of blocks in the chakras and so on like that. So it's very purifying.
Right. So it's a clearing, and I've always heard the word unwinding as well. So
Right. Well, definitely clearing. I don't quite know
And the
what.
serpent uncoiling.
yes, thank you.
I think
Right.
that's.
I mean,
you're-
from what I've little amount of experience of the practice itself, it doesn't actually feel like that. It's more to do with when the energy goes up the spine, you have different blisses from different chakras. So, and that's the idea. You're supposed to go up the spine to the chakra in your head, and go back down and that sort of thing. It's very beautiful meditation. But it's more that when you, it's sort of like purifying. Well, maybe that's not a good word for it, but basically the blisses clear out difficult karma. So it's a very important meditation in certain practices.
Yeah. Thank you. I was having seen that graphic of the 2 paths winding around the core vertical, I just was reminded of the serpent. I mean, where it seemed like that was the serpent to me, but
That's good. I just put up on the screen what Wikipedia has. So I just noticed that Wikipedia has this is part of a series on Hindu philosophy. So someone who put this together has, again, some Hindu bent. And all it's saying here is Kundalini, which literally means coiled snake, is a form of divine feminine energy, or Shakti, believed to be located at the base of the spine in Muladhara. It's an important concept in Shaiva Tantra, where it's believed to be a force or power associated with the divine feminine, or the formless aspect of the goddess. This energy in the body, when cultivated and awakened through tantric practice, is believed to lead to spiritual liberation. Kundalini is associated with Parvati or Adi Parashakti, the supreme being, and Shakti, his and with the goddesses Barabi and Kubjaka. The term, along with practices associated, was adopted into Hatha yoga in the 9th century and has since been adopted into other forms of Hinduism, as well as modern spirituality and New Age thought. So there you have it from Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it was always interesting to me too that, you know, it was this coiled serpent. I mean, the serpent comes back into the conversation.
Right. Yeah, well, it says it's coiled snake. That's what it says. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do believe that is
But-
what they were talking about in the old Hebrew texts, you know, about the Garden of Eden.
And it's always this yin and yang, these two polarities is what you're seeing here. And so it goes. So
And my understanding is that the stories were describing Eve initiating Adam, that's really what was happening.
But the other thing to take note, like my teacher mentioned this a number of times, is that Kundalini yoga is very dangerous.
Mhm.
You have to be very careful. His comment is that there's a lot of people in India who are in the hospital for not practicing it properly.
Well,
So it's
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard the same thing, you know.
my
it's-
Kabbalah teacher apparently just was made a wreck of himself doing various kinds of alchemical and Kundalini exercises on his own.
Yeah.
And he said part of his healing was with a Buddhist teacher who he then became fully surrendered to, even though he was studying Kabbalah. But this teacher sat back to back with him and would boost his own energy up his central column there to stimulate David's in order to help him heal it, because his had gotten so out of balance.
Yeah.
From what he had been doing on his own, that this master was able to, by stimulating his own, get David's to move in parity with his own, and sort of give him samadhi experiences to help him heal. He said, "What have you been doing to yourself? You're a wreck." You know,
What's the danger of it?
it's a potent electrical energy that can mess up your
So you
nervous
burn
system.
yourself out?
Yeah, you can mess up your nervous system and your brain.
Yeah, I always think of Star Wars, which Star Wars is not, you know, it's a metaphor, and you have the Force, you have the dark
Right.
side of the Force, and so this is where the dark side takes over,
Mhm.
which is not what you want.
Right.
And I think when people are doing it on their own also, they're just experimenting kind of randomly. And because you're inside it yourself, you don't know what's getting messed up. You don't, I think it's really important to do it with, you know, an experienced teacher and under supervision.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell. I'm just coming out of this, you know, brain fog that I've been in for about 3 years. And I'm just astonished at where I've been, you know, and as I'm doing things that I used to do in no time at all, and it takes me all day to do these things on the computer, that I get lost. I get into these detours and these tangents. I can't even articulate it, but I'm just starting to realize what a mess my brain had become from all of it. Because I think because I was inside the experience, I didn't know that that there was something that wrong. Until now, I'm starting to come out of it. And I think it can be like that when you have these kind of misdirected awakenings, you know, in quotes.
What you need is an Obi-Wan Kenobi. See?
Well, in the end, what you need is a real meditation master. Meditation master can actually, because he has full awareness, he has direct awareness of what is happening in your body. He
Right.
knows exactly how it got there, what's happening, and how to fix it. In a section, that's what these meditation masters are like. They're incredible. It's just like,
Sure.
but they're very rare, you know.
This this man that he considered to be his master, even though he was, you know, an avid practitioner and student of Kabbalah, this was in Michigan. So he spent a lot of time on retreat up there, going from New York City up to see him in Michigan and spending, you know, weeks at a time at his center.
Right.
So that's all we're going to do for tonight on meditation. Every class, we're going to spend time on meditation. Okay, so I'm just trying to get into it. So we're now turning to astrology.
And we'd like to spend, we'll try to spend some time actually meditating.
Yeah.
We just spent a couple of weeks, I just want to share, looking for a yoga studio to have a labyrinth walk in. That was something we wanted to do. We were wondering about broadcasting it and what to do. There's almost no yoga studios left in the area. And the sort of biggest in the tri-town area is, it's like the size of a living room now. They've had to move to a new space. The space they were in is being made into condos. And it's just really tragic. So we couldn't find any place where we could fit my canvas, which is 25 feet across. That's not huge, you know, and we just spent a lot of time in the past 2 or 3 weeks looking and looking and looking, and finally had to give up.
What happened to the Unitarian Church?
They didn't want to hold it this year. They don't have what's called a sexton, as the person who helps with setting up and breaking down events and cleaning and all of that.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
it would
they
have to
had-
be in a sanctuary, and the sanctuary has chairs in it. You have to basically take up 100 chairs and then put them back down after you do it. So there's more work than you think.
I've done it all by myself. It's hard. It's exhausting. And we would need about 6 people and planning it. And with COVID, you know, being what it is and all that, they just decided they had some other event happening on the same day, and they just felt like it was too much. We did it last year there, and I've done them for years there, but everything is changing. It's, you know, we have been kind of in a little denial about it. So, but we wanted, so we're looking in, the upshot is that we're looking into more ways to learn to do these things online. Even though I don't think it's the optimal way to do it. It's something, and you know, the divine goes everywhere. The divine works through any medium, and there's energy here as well. So we can, you know, we're going to explore ways to work together experientially. So,
The problem is you can do Zoom yoga classes. You can't do Zoom labyrinth walks.
No.
and even with Zoom yoga, our teacher's very experienced. She's a teacher of teachers. She couldn't really see. You don't have the same depth perception with these little screens. I was doing something really not good for my hip, you know, and now we've been off for a few weeks and it's much better, you know. So it's all got its pros and cons. It's really nice to not have to leave the house in the middle of a storm or something and, you know, get to do yoga together, but it's not the same. So we're just figuring out, you know, that we're going to have to do things differently. We don't really know how. So we had talked about sharing some astrology every week. And, we can look into, I've decided, I used to teach it in person. To do it online, I'm gonna have to be learning some new software to be able to show it. It wouldn't really be effective the way we work here with, what is it? The software that we usually use, Acrobat and,
Oh, yeah, this is Acrobat.
but the
Yeah.
other one,
Or
no, we don't, do we work with Core?
PowerPoint?
Yes, PowerPoint, thank you. So there's PowerPoint-like things that are specifically instructional. So I think it'll probably be a good stretch for me, but it's also still hard for me with my eyes and my brain. So to kind of ease into that, I wanted to kind of share more talking about it a little bit every week. So this will be kind of overview, and we can see if people really do want to start to learn the nuts and bolts. To really, really learn it, it's like learning a language, and it takes about 3 years. You can do a lot in 1 year, and I developed this method with these 12-sided dice that make it kind of a game that I think really speeds up the process. So if everybody ordered their dice, their duodecahedrons, if everybody ordered their astro dice, or maybe I can order them and then send them to you, they're a physical object that it helps. Then you can, it's almost like runes, and it gets you used to working with, divination, and learning the way it kind of speaks is a different way of speaking. So anyway, with that, I just thought I'd share this article that I just dusted off. Back in 2005, I had a version of it in Natural Awakenings magazine, and I got a response from it for about a year. It was, a very nice response. So I'm going to read it out loud from paper, and maybe
The Natural Awakenings is
if you want to read it along with me.
it's a franchise, and so this is in the Fairfield County, Connecticut version of it.
How do we get it down a bit? That's too much. Well,
We can't see. Oh,
I don't want 200. Why can't
go to
I?
minus. Just go to minus. Goes to 100.
Yeah, and I
So
can't type
and we can't
in.
do. We go to
Play slash
200.
pause.
Go to what?
Play slash pause.
Flash mode. Where is flash mode in Acrobat?
Pause. It's something about pause, something. But why can't I just go where I want to go? Well, I think that's. Can people read this at home?
It's pretty teeny. Take it up to 200. Let's just see.
Previous view.
Put a plus.
Okay, that's a
There we
little more
go.
reasonable.
There. Go a
bit
little
better.
more. There. That's good. That's good.
That's better.
Okay. Okay, so this is just kind of an introduction to what astrology is beyond sun signs, that I wanted to get people thinking that knew nothing about it, and introducing what Jungian astrology is compared to any other. It's so dark in here. So I first did this in 2005, and I just dusted it off this week. So I still basically agree with myself. So here I'm sharing, Jungian astrology teaches us to think like interpersonal anthropologists, exploring what makes ourselves and others tick with less judgment and greater compassion. Our intimate relationships introduce us to the foreign culture of another's inner universe while mirroring our own. Astrology is a spiritual telescope illuminating both inner night skies. When evaluating a couple's compatibility, many conventional astrologers look for favorable angles between each partner's 10 planets, indicating a lot of easy flow in the relationship. Jungian astrologers, however, see all relationships as vehicles for consciousness, sometimes serving unseen spiritual purposes. We actually welcome challenging aspects and relationships as opportunities for growth, as grist for the mill. Reluctant to give evaluations, predictions, or directives, we support clients to make more conscious decisions based on astrological insight into their own personalities, patterns, and potentials. As Heraclitus put it, character is destiny. Because our inner patterns create our outer situations, dynamics, and relationships, insight into our inner landscape naturally transforms our outer decisions, actions, and reactions. The first subhead is Hall of Mirrors. The goal of the Jungian astrologer is to elucidate rather than evaluate any relationship. We are not looking for easy or good contacts, between the planets there, but for significant themes between the two individuals. Working with both partners' entire horoscopes, the astrologer examines all of the aspects or geometric angles between all 10 planets in each chart, a total of 20, along with each partner's ascendant and descendant degrees and additional points. Moving beyond sun signs, while one sun represents the ego self or conscious identity, the rising sign or ascendant, the eastern horizon at the moment of birth, shows the mask or persona with which we wish to face the world. It's often the first impression we give. The opposite point, the descendant, DSC, shows us the metaphorical back of our own head. Obviously, the back of one's own head is difficult to see unless someone else kindly holds up a mirror. This is exactly what our most intimate relationships can do for us, often to our chagrin. It is a truism that whatever initially attracts us to someone is often exactly what drives us crazy in the end. So neat freaks can end up with slobs as the initial charm of spontaneity becomes chaos in our eyes. This phenomenon called projection is actually a reflection of our own unconscious inner qualities, positive and negative in our own eyes, as seen in the other. Qualities that we approve of but don't see within ourselves are exaggerated as wondrous in the other, and we fall in love. Unconscious inner qualities that we reject as negative in ourselves call forth our harshest criticism and judgment of others. Now here we get into the shadow nose. One astrological window into this dynamic is the descendant. The cusp of the 7th house, which governs relationship, shows our perception of the other. It is not unusual for couples to have one's sun, ascendant, or moon close to the partner's descendant or in the other's 7th house. For example, I wrote this initially in 2005, and it's incredibly about our charts. So I'll just share that here. For example, say that a woman's sun is an intellectual, unemotional Gemini, while her ascendant is in reliable Taurus, also known as Taurus rising. She hopes to come across as in control and even-tempered. And let's say that much to the dismay of her Gemini son's conscious desire for detachment, she finds herself continually embroiled in emotional dramas. An uncanny number of these overwhelmingly intense relationships may be with partners who have sun, moon, or ascendant in the passionate sign of Scorpio, opposite her ascendant in Taurus. Just by the way, that's what I have. I'm a Taurus rising, so that means I'm a Scorpio setting. And Bart's whole Scorpio stellium goes across my descendant, including his ascendant. So they're opposite. This pattern would reflect her own unacknowledged Scorpio descendant opposite her Taurus ascendant, which is luring her into these intense emotional encounters in order to integrate her own consciously denied desire for powerful emotional experiences. It may be difficult for her to acknowledge this hidden dimension of her own psyche, her own shadow. But if she can learn to embrace, so to speak, her own unconscious desire for greater passion, her transformational release of self-judgment will make her more whole, liberating her genuine emotional expression and deepening her entire experience of love and life. Perhaps more than any other human endeavor, conscious relationship requires non-judgmental compassion for ourselves as well as others. Astrological insight into hidden motivations helps us to transcend our naturally subjective cultural ego bias. And in the language of Jungian astrology, our dance with shadow can be reborn as sacred relationship. Just go down to show my bio.
Can I get it? There it is.
So this is me dusting this all off. And it's going to be a section on our Aleph Talks website. And I'm going to be seeing if there's a way to do readings online and classes online.
So there you go. Any comments out of anybody? We can, you want to send this out as
Yes.
an
sure.
attachment as the email with the recording. So we'll do that.
I'm
Beautifully
still
done.
punching with the spacing.
Do you have
Pardon
more?
me?
I said it's beautifully done. You should do this like sequential exploration of different from the Jungian perspective, because it's
Scroll up a little,
definitely
show the image.
much more the Jungian approach just is just deeper. There's more substance to it, right? It really tries to bring in much more many more teachings, I guess, or much more whatever. I don't know how to say this, but
I
this
like
kind
that. Thank you.
no, it makes and like there's like the tarot. It's cool. Anyway, that's it. I'll shut up now.
Oh, thank you very much. That was a nice reflection.
Cool.
Yeah, we really try to share insight rather than direction, rather than telling people either what's going to happen or what to do. Because frankly, I don't know. I don't know what people could do, but I think I can help people see, as I said, the back of our own heads, just with insight into patterns that are unconscious. The purpose is to bring more of what's unconscious up to consciousness. And
Well, it makes sense because in a regular reading, if someone's giving you their interpretation of what they see or what's going to happen, it kind of it makes people kind of hone in or focus on that, right? And giving them less choice in where they want to go. as opposed to explaining what might be their strengths or shortcomings or potentially hangups, and then giving people the option to forge a path that may help incorporate and take a and veer their path in a different direction, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we actually are trying to help people be more free and not less free. You know, by being more conscious of what you might not be conscious of, hopefully that's liberating. You know, hopefully the insight becomes gives you more free range and more consciousness. We may not be able to change everything that's happening, but I do believe we can change our relationship to what's happening and our experience of what's happening. And that's really the purpose, is to reframe it and to just look at it in a more aware ways. So, you know,
You want to talk about the figure, the picture?
Bart's suggesting I talk about the image. Well, in this context, I called it Rebirth of Venus. It's actually an illustration for something else that I had written years before. And it was one of the first Photoshop collages that I did. I was waiting for years for Photoshop to become good enough to do this kind of thing. And like, there's the crown of Statue of Liberty. This actually goes with something that's about the New York Harbor. And I just kind of experienced the Statue of Liberty as this goddess in the harbor. Maybe we can blow this up a little. And
Maybe at the bottom.
yeah. And those are black pearls. And I had this whole thing. There was this kind of symbolic experience. My name Marjorie comes from Margaret, which is the Persian word for pearl. So I've always considered pearls as an important symbol for me. And my mother's name was Dorothy Sophia. She pronounced it Sophia or Sophia. And Dorothy means gift of the gods, and Sophia means wisdom. And so I've always really resonated with that. And so I did this collage in like 1990 initially, and I sort of codified it in 1995. But that was of an experience that I had in 1986. So that's been something that's really kind of haunted me. And that's the coiled serpent represents wisdom and Kundalini. And that's the Orphic egg. So all of there's a lot of symbolism here. And Venus being the goddess of love, and that's a tsunami. That's a Japanese woodblock that I kind of morphed with some images of the Milky Way. And so for me, it's kind of the 12th house. So I asked my students at the time to come up with a representation of a planet in a sign in a house. And everybody did it, and they were wonderful. One woman brought in this shoebox of little objects, and we all got that it was Venus in Aquarius, which was neat. And so this would be Venus in the 12th house. And I had another one that I did for that class. And so I'm working on this series of collages and poems and writings. And mine was Saturn in the 8th house, which I have. So it's been something that's preoccupied me for many, many years.
Okay. So we'll get out of this. And hold on one sec.
Now, things that have preoccupied Bart for many, many years.
Well, I go here. That's where I'm gonna go.
And I'm seeing more and more connections. You know, I really wondered what would come of our encounter, but I think we're really cross-pollinating in a lot of ways. And I'm sort of seeing more of the physics behind astrology every day. It works on the principle of unity. It works because of the unity of the universe, which is more complex than.
This is
than we might
this is
understand.
Jung's collective unconscious, right? So what I'm going to do now on the science piece is we had this very incredible tour de force, I thought, of Stephen Wolfram talking about what he was trying to do to recast physics in the light of computation and information. And one of the things that I just mentioned was he has a company that's very successful commercially, probably $100 million a year software company, which allows him to pursue whatever he wants to pursue. And the basic part of it is this Wolfram language that he's developed, which he's using to develop his product, his Mathematica product, which is a symbolic mathematical program. It'll simplify, evaluate symbolically things, not numerically. And the thing about his language, though, is he's put all of his physics into this language as well, so that he can actually see if he comes up with some idea, he can actually go ahead and let it run. And the thing that he was worried about here was that it would be so complicated that he would run for, say, 10 to the minus 100th seconds, which is like nothing whatsoever. And then you'd have exhausted all the computation in the universe, which is a tip off that that's probably not the way the universe works too. But anyway, he's put together this language, and so everything is built. All of his physics is built on this language. So I just wanted to give you a little exposure to what in the world he's done here, because this is no small accomplishment. You get some appreciation of how smart he is.
Plot the tour on a map as a thick red line. And yes, the Wolfram language has
I'm
detailed.
going to start it at the beginning.
Hi, I'm Stephen Wolfram, and I'd like to show you a bit about our Wolfram language. You know, I've been working towards what's now the Wolfram language for about 30 years. And big parts of it I've been able to incubate in Mathematica and Wolfram Alpha. But it's only in recent times that we finally had what we need to create the whole Wolfram language and to set up mechanisms to deploy it very widely. We're actually at an incredibly exciting point right now, where we're suddenly able to take computation to a whole new level and in effect inject sophisticated computation into everything. So what is the Wolfram language? Well, the first thing to say is that it's a new kind of thing. It's what I call a knowledge-based language. It's a language where a vast amount of knowledge about how to do computations and about the world is built right into the language. So right within the language, there are primitives for processing images or laying out networks or looking up stock prices or creating interfaces or solving optimization problems or whatever. And through the symbolic structure of the language, they're all set up to work together in a wonderfully coherent way. Let me show you. One of the great things about the Wolfram language is that if you want to, you can use it completely interactively, even on the web. So you can type something in and immediately get a result out.
Oh, you lost it.
Like this, or like this. Yes, it's fast. Of course, it knows how to factor that number too. It's got all the fancy algorithms built right in. It's also got immediate visualization. It also knows right off the bat, like how to get your friend network from Facebook. It lays out the network automatically, and it knows all the fancy graph theory algorithms. So you can immediately ask it all kinds of things about the network, like how do your friends break into groups? Or what's the most connections any friend has? The Wolfram language knows how to do lots of things, like let's ask it to get the current image from my computer's camera. Ah, that's me. Well, let's like edge detect me. I can have it be dynamic too. I can do all kinds of computations. Like there's me broken into little squares. And there's me with a random color blended into each square. And now reassembled. The Wolfram language doesn't just know about algorithms and computations, it also knows about the world. Like, let's ask it when the sun will set today. There's the answer for my current location. There's the time from sunrise to sunset in days. We can convert it to minutes. You know, the Wolfram language has a precise way of talking about everything. But when we're dealing with the world at large, we often just want to use natural language to describe what we're talking about. And thanks to Wolfram Alpha, we've built a big stack of technology for doing that. Like we can just ask for countries in South America, and our natural language understanding system can figure out what that means and generate precise Wolfram language code from it, so that we get a list of the countries. And now we can compute from that. Like, let's generate their flags, or let's find the dominant colors in those flags, or let's have a whole little program to make a table of countries and their dominant flag colors. Okay, let's try something more ambitious. Let's get a list of the capitals of the countries in Western Europe. Now let's find what order we have to visit these in to have the shortest tour of all of them. Needless to say, the Wolfram language has the best known algorithms for solving the so-called traveling salesman problem like that. Now let's plot the tour on a map as a thick red line. And yes, the Wolfram language has detailed maps of everywhere built in. Okay, well, I've been doing different kinds of examples. There's really a huge amount built into the Wolfram language. You can get a sense of it here. Thousands of algorithmic functions, thousands of domains of data and knowledge. But in a sense, that's just the beginning, because there's so much more power from being able to put all these things together. And what makes that possible is the structure of the Wolfram language and the principles that it's built on. The first really critical thing to understand about the Wolfram language is that it's symbolic. If you have X, you don't have to give it a value. You can just have it be symbolic X. You can type in a formula involving X. And then you can do a computation on the formula symbolically. And of course, this is great for math, but one of the big discoveries of the Wolfram language is that it gives you a way to do a zillion other things too. Let's say you've got some data with a part you don't know. You can just treat it symbolically. What about something like a network? Well, in the Wolfram language, it's a symbolic expression too, that displays as a graph, but you can go ahead and manipulate it symbolically too. Same with 3D graphics. Go ahead and create a symbolic form, render it as 3D graphics. Now, because everything is symbolic, I can just pick up this output and say, feed it into an image processing algorithm, or I can make a table of rotated versions of the image. Something else that's a symbolic expression in Wolfram language is a user interface element, like a slider. I can make a whole grid of them, build up any user interface, all just represented by a symbolic expression. Same with documents and document elements too, all just symbolic. And once things are symbolic, it's easy to do meta operations on them, like take a plot and effectively just pick it up and make a dynamic version of it. You can make a dynamic version of anything. And because everything is a symbolic expression, it all just works. You know, any function can be treated symbolically. Here's just F, symbolic F. And actually underneath, the full form of everything in the language is like this. Just a bunch of symbolic functions representing formulas or data sets or documents or cities or whatever. So what can you do with these symbolic functions? Well, one thing is incredibly powerful functional programming. Nest a function symbolically, or put more and more frames around something, or make a kind of nested interface. Okay, here's something more ambitious. Let's use functional programming to do some web crawling. The Wolfram language already knows how to import lots of things, like hyperlinks from my website. A little more code, but let's nestedly crawl out a couple of levels, then make a graph of what that corner of the web looks like. You know, you can make symbolic pure functions do all sorts of things. Like this takes the list of English words that are built into the Wolfram language and creates a function to find which one is nearest to a given word. Now you can pick up this function and apply it to any word and make a simple spell corrector. Pure functions and functional programming get in everywhere. Here's selecting palindrome words based on a simple symbolic pure function. You can generalize this dramatically and, for example, get a shockingly powerful symbolic way to query databases and large hierarchical collections of data. In a sense, the Wolfram language is kind of the ultimate fusion language because its symbolic nature lets it encompass pretty much any style of programming. One that's very powerful and kind of uniquely symbolic is pattern-based programming. The idea is you give a pattern for transforming some class of symbolic expressions. Like this says that anytime there's f of some particular nested list structure, here's the value. So now if we give f this kind of structure, it'll produce a result. But if the pattern doesn't match, it'll just stay symbolic. And this is basically how all function definitions in the Wolfram language work. The Wolfram language is a huge language, by far the largest ever, but it's built on a small set of powerful principles. The first is coherence, the idea that everything in the language must fit together. I must say that I've spent a fair fraction of the past 30 years working to make this happen, designing every corner of the language so it's as consistent and unified and integrated as possible. So it's easy to understand, and so one can take something from over here and be confident that it'll feed right into something over there. I've had another principle too, maximum automation. The idea that the language should take care of as much as possible. Let's say you're doing machine learning and you want to build a data classifier. Well, there are all sorts of methods for doing that, but in the Wolfram language, there's just one super function, classify, that's packed with meta algorithms to automatically figure out what to do. Of course, if you want, you can go in and control every detail, but otherwise you can just treat it like a black box, one of thousands of super functions in the Wolfram language that effectively give you the highest possible level building blocks for programs. And these building blocks don't just contain algorithms, they've got knowledge and data too. Knowledge about how to import and export hundreds of formats, knowledge about how to interact with all sorts of external APIs, knowledge about how to compute properties of systems in the world, and also huge amounts of curated computable data stored in the Wolfram cloud and continuously updated. The same data that powers Wolfram Alpha, completely programmatically accessible. But okay, so the Wolfram language makes it really easy to create really powerful programs. But what can you do with them? Well, it turns out that the symbolic nature of the language does something great here too, because it lets the language define and describe its own deployment. Let's say you set up a function in the Wolfram language. You can run it in your notebook session, or you can just take the symbolic code and deploy it to the cloud. You can just go to the cloud object from the web, and if you do, you'll see a web interface, which automatically runs your Wolfram language code in the cloud. And by the way, you can set up a mobile app to do the same kind of thing. The interface here uses CDF, our computable document format, running in the cloud. And in fact, you can run the whole native notebook interface for the Wolfram language in the cloud. Here it is. You can use notebooks as templates for reports that get filled in by running Wolfram language code. You can schedule Wolfram language code to run on cloud servers at particular times, say sending you mail. You can take any Wolfram language function and set up an instant API for it that you can call from anywhere on the web. Like this asks for a JSON output of some weather data for the user's geolocation. If you have an embedded Wolfram engine, you can get code to embed a call to this in lots of languages. And you can actually call the code without even going to the web. One thing about the Wolfram language is that it's completely scalable. You can write tiny one-line programs that are already very powerful, or you can write multi-million line programs like Wolfram Alpha. It's so much easier to build and debug symbolic programs because at every stage, every piece is meaningful. And depending on your style of programming, there are various IDEs for the Wolfram language that take advantage of the symbolic character of the language. You can use the Wolfram language for high-performance computing too. It's got parallels built right into the language. So this is automatically starting up and running lots of different processes across my little heterogeneous network and collecting the results. You can also use the Wolfram language on the upcoming generation of tiny embedded processors. And for example, it's included with the OS for the Raspberry Pi Linux computer. You can use the Wolfram language to interact with devices. In fact, the Wolfram language is in a unique position with respect to devices and with respect to real-world data in general, because in a sense, it's a language that has a model of the world built in. And in fact, WDF, the Wolfram Data Framework, encapsulates that model. And within the Wolfram language, there are lots of ways of taking unstructured data and getting it into WDF, with its units and dates and entities and so on made canonical. When it comes to devices, the Wolfram Connected Devices project is curating them to make them automatically accessible from within the language. Okay, so I've tried to give some indication of what the Wolfram language is about. So how can you get started? Like after every output, there's a suggestions bar that suggests what you might want to do next. And you can even try just giving input in natural language and starting to construct your programs that way. And when you've got a program you like, you can deploy it in all sorts of ways. My goal with the Wolfram language has been to encapsulate as much computational knowledge as possible, so people can go from ideas to deployed products as quickly and easily as possible. I've also been very pleased that the Wolfram language seems to be uniquely good as a first programming language, because you can do so much so easily and quickly get exposed to such a broad range of methods and topics. I've been working towards the Wolfram language for 30 years. We laid strong foundations very early, and we've just kept on building. And actually, I keep on being amazed at what's possible. And now we've got a vast stack of technology and content that I think just completely changes how we should think about programming. I get a big kick out of using it every day. I hope you'll have a chance to try it and that you'll end up doing amazing things with the Wolfram language. Thanks very much.
So there you have a brief overview of the Wolfram language. There's this old joke that what language will we be using in 100 years to program computers? And the answer is, I don't know, but we'll call it Fortran. So, oops, hold on one sec. I didn't want to go here. I want to go, sorry. I want to go to, I'll go back here. And then I'm going to go. Wanted to try one more of these. Here we go. This is it.
And these are all being assembled on our website, so you can find them there.
Wait, stop this. Where did the camera go? Oh, we're still on screen share. Oh, that's right. That's because we were here. Sure. Okay, so now let's get this. Okay.
I've talked about the basic concepts of Wolfram physics, nodes, edges, graphs, and rules. I just threw these concepts out there. No explanation, no rhyme, no reason. Nodes, edges, graphs, and rules. Take them or leave them. Naturally, this raised a few questions in some people's minds. These questions can be summed up as follows. Wait, what? Nodes, edges, graphs, and rules? Why? This is a deep question, so let's get into it. At the end of episode 4, Different Rules, Different Universes, I asked the question, what does our universe look like? If we're going to satisfy ourselves that the nodes, edges, graphs, and rules of Wolfram physics are a true representation of our universe, we need to be clear on what our universe looks like. When we look at the universe, what do we see? Well, here are a few things. We see space, we see time, we see matter. Think of that stone I held in my hand last time. It's made of something, matter. When I dropped it, it fell through space. A short time after I dropped it, I caught it in my other hand. Space, time, matter. We could go into a lot more detail on each of these, but just recognizing that these are the things we observe in our universe is a start. If our nodes, edges, graphs, and rules don't look like space, time, and matter as we observe them in our universe, then they're not going to work as a theory of physics. Space, time, and matter aren't the only things we see in our universe. We also see life, we see consciousness, we see meaning. These things are more important to us than space, time, and matter. Who cares about falling stones? What we really care about are the higher things: life, consciousness, meaning. Here's the bad news. These things may be beyond the scope of any theory of physics, let alone theories as fundamental as Stephen Wolfram's. But here's the good news. I'm not going to cop out entirely on the questions of life, consciousness, and meaning. They're too fascinating for me to retreat into narrow reductionism. I'll return to them in future episodes. In this episode, however, I'm going to focus on the first of these three fundamental things that we see in our universe: space. What is space? What does it look like? We're taught in school that space is three-dimensional. Imagine for a moment, though, that you hadn't been taught in school that space is three-dimensional. How would you think about space? Here's how the Polynesians, who navigated their way by canoe between hundreds of Pacific islands, once represented their world. These days, our maps are so precise, with every location plotted in exact longitudes and latitudes, that we forget how the world once appeared to us. The Polynesians represented Pacific islands as points, and the ocean currents between those islands as lines between those points. You might notice a passing resemblance between those stick charts and the nodes and edges of Wolfram physics we've been exploring in the last few episodes. The nodes look a little like the shells representing islands on the stick charts, and the edges look a little like the sticks representing the roots between them. Let me be clear. The graphs of Wolfram physics are on an entirely different scale from these stick charts. The roots between the islands on the charts represent distances of maybe 100 miles, around 10 to the power of 5 meters. The edges between the nodes on our graph represent distances of, who knows, maybe 10 to the minus 100 meters. 10 to the power of 5 meters versus 10 to the power of minus 100 meters. That's an unimaginable difference in scale. Still, it's promising that some of the graphs of Wolfram physics show some of the same characteristics of space that we see in those beautiful stick charts. Let's dig a little deeper into what those characteristics of space are. Characteristic number one is position. In our universe, things have positions in space. Take any one of the shells on the stick chart. It's not just anywhere, it's somewhere. It's right here at this position in space rather than any other position in space. Same goes for the island it represents. That island isn't just anywhere in the Pacific, it's somewhere in the Pacific. And that's true of the nodes on our graphs too. Take any one of these nodes. It's not just anywhere on the graph, it's somewhere on the graph. So far, so good. Characteristic number two is distance. In our universe, some things are further apart than others. Take two shells that are close together on the stick chart. They're separated only by a short length of stick on the chart. The islands they represent are a relatively short canoe ride apart in the Pacific. However, take the shell on the far left of the chart and the one on the far right of the chart. These two shells are a long way apart. To get from one to the other on the chart, you have to traverse many different sticks. To paddle between the islands they represent in the Pacific, you have to ride many different currents, no doubt stopping at some of the islands along the way. And again, that's true for nodes on our graphs too. Take two nodes that are connected by a single edge. When I wrote the software to render the graph, I designed it to show these two nodes close together because you only have to traverse that one edge to get from one to the other. However, take the node on the far left of the graph and the one on the far right of the graph. To get from the far left node to the far right node on the graph, you have to traverse many different edges. So I designed the software to show those two nodes far apart. Note that it's not the lengths of the edges that matter here. Those lengths are arbitrary. I designed the software to make all the edges as close as possible to the same length. What matters is the number of edges you have to traverse to get from one to the other. That concept of the number of edges between two nodes on the graph looks like a pretty good representation of our concept of the distance between 2 points in space. So again, so far, so good. Position and distance aren't the only characteristics of space we'll want to reproduce in Wolfram physics. And space isn't the only thing we see in the universe that we'll also want to see in our nodes, edges, graphs, and rules. There's time too, remember, and matter, not to mention myriad other aspects of the universe. Still, position and distance are a start. We can look at some of the graphs of Wolfram physics and immediately recognize at least these two fundamental characteristics of space in what we see. Some of our graphs, at least, look a little like space as we know it. Space as the Polynesians once represented it in their stick charts. So why nodes, edges, graphs, and rules? Because they look a little like our universe. Of course, the nodes, edges, graphs, and rules of Wolfram physics are going to have to look a lot like our universe if it's to be a viable theory of physics. We'll get there. Next time I'll go beyond position and distance and introduce a few other characteristics of space we'll want to reproduce in Wolfram physics. The more of these characteristics we introduce, the better we'll be able to distinguish between rules that build unfamiliar universes and rules that build universes that look a little like our own.
So there you have, just a little follow-up on what we saw last time. And I put together something here. So let me see if I can get it up on. Yeah,
You're
there
not
it is.
giving anybody a chance to ask any questions.
Sure, questions.
I was being a little facetious.
What Wolfram did here is he went over many things, but there's a real fundamental thing he did I want to just bring out here in this presentation I just put together. So just to review, he has these set of rules which he calls a ruliad. And their rules are algorithms that govern how the universe operates. And the rules can be very simple, but the outcomes can be very complicated, okay? Now, in fact, I found someplace, that the Hindu mystics claim there's only 5, check this out, there's only 5 rules that govern the entire universe. But they're very tricky rules. So it goes. One of the things just to keep in mind when he's talking about space here, and he's got this notion of a graph with points on it, is that as we drill down into space, this is something that Ron Cowan observed. We get down and we look at a compartment of space that only contains either nothing or it contains at most two different particles, 2 of these things we call subquarks, for example. The compartment of space actually directly matches one of these graphs. It has kind of a front end and a back end, or a top and a bottom, however you want to think about it. And then it has what makes up the compartment is their little edges running around in it that hold everything in. The difference is that the space compartment happens to be in a 26-dimensional space. So we need 26 different numbers to describe anything that we see in there, okay? So let's drill through this a little more. But what we ended up seeing originally was hundreds of years ago, 1680 or so, Newton started off and he said there's 3 dimensions for space and there's 1 dimension for time. But the time, is something different. We can't really show time as a length of any sort, but that's what we had: 3 dimensions for space and 1 for time. And that worked great for hundreds of years. Maxwell showed up and he decided to codify a lot of observations of electromagnetism into a theory. And his theory naturally operated in 4 dimensions, 3 for space and 1 for time. But it was really Einstein that realized that the space and time dimensions that Newton thought were not coupled together, in fact, are coupled together. That there's something funny going on here. And this led to this theory of special relativity that Einstein came up with. So all of a sudden, we've got these 4 dimensions are coupled. Then what we touched on was Richard Feynman, who was at Caltech and is a Nobel laureate in 1962, put together a class at Caltech for graduate students. And he showed that the simplest quantum theory of general relativity deals with spin 2 gravitons. Now let's just back up and see what this is. We've got a quantum theory of general relativity. Well, Einstein did his not simply special relativity, but general relativity. But he, again, used 4 dimensions, 3 for space and 1 for time. And they could be warped. You could think of them as being some sort of rubber sheet, and that controlled everything here. The things that were mass ended up distorting the rubber sheet that was space-time. But that's on a very big scale. Feynman wanted to go down and look at the smallest scale, the scale at which space-time was actually quantized, when we had compartments of space there with time. And so when he did this, that theory has to be the real theory, okay? Because that's been validated by numerous experiments. The quantum theory is really the correct physical theory. But the problem he faced was the only theory he could get to work was where he had these graviton particles that handled gravity, and they had to have not a spin 0 and not a spin 1, but a spin 2. And with that, Feynman stopped working on this. Who knows what he would have done if he continued. So in 1970, a chap named Lovelace was looking at what Feynman did. And so he put together a model of what we today would call vibrating strings. And he discovered that the only way for the strings to vibrate and to have anything that was self-consistent with the spin 2 graviton theory was we had to have 26 real dimensions, 26 real dimensions. Anything less than that, it didn't work. And in the possible, we could go higher, okay? And what this showed was that things called photons, or as an example, we call them bosons, operate in all of these 26 dimensions. But things that we call matter, which are also called fermions, which makes us up, operate in one 10-dimensional subspace. What we call dark matter fermions operate in a second 10-dimensional subspace. And that leaves one 6-dimensional subspace that synchronizes everything between the two 10-dimensional subspaces. And so it goes. So what happened here in all of this stuff, the thing that Wolfram did that just got missed in the talk he was giving. And here, by the way, this is his things he put together as his visual summary, so you can take a look at these at your leisure. Okay, is that the theory of the very small, which is called this quantum theory, has to work with the theory that's on the very large, which is this, for example, theory of general relativity. And the problem is that when people tried to mesh these things together, they still haven't succeeded. And there's a very fundamental reason for doing this. The things that work on the very small and the things that work on the very large, meaning gravity, are very different forces, and therefore the scales that they operate on are also very different. Gravity is much weaker than these other forces of electromagnetism or the so-called strong and weak force, much those are incredibly strong compared to gravity. So people started asking themselves, well, is there some domain where the things that are in the very small, meaning this electromagnetism stuff, and the things that are on the very large, meaning gravity, where they're comparable to one another? And the answer that they came up with was yes. When we started the universe, when we had this big bang, we had a very small universe. People don't know how big it was, but it was probably, less than the size of a basketball, the entire universe. And the very small scale meant that gravity was working, but now it was only working over a very short distance. And all of the things that would be called the very small quantum effects would also be in play, so that everything would be comparable to one another. And then we'd be able to see how in the world these things are, how we could have one theory that would describe both things that work on the very small, the quantum mechanics theory, and the things that work on the very large, meaning things like gravity. And Wolfram just does this totally naturally by setting it all up with these graphs, so that when you look at it, there's only one set of graphs, and they work for everything. Of course, he hasn't written down any equations yet, but he's going in this direction where he can naturally have things on the very small and things on the very large. And one of the problems with looking at things where you have the start of the universe is that's kind of like an interesting experiment, but how do you repeat it? How do you start the universe over again to test whatever experimental prediction, whatever experimental measurement you're trying to carry out? No one knows how to do it. And that's one of the problems with these sorts of theories, is that no one has really come up with any meaningful experimental tests for them, other than to start the universe over again, which is not too useful. That's because we touched on this thing called string theory, that's the criticism of string theory, is that it can't handle the very small and the very large. It can't handle any coming up with any experiments. It might be a very mathematically sophisticated theory, but physics deals with data, and where in the world is the data that does this? So that's what I want you to, if you get one thing out of this, that's what Wolfram did, was coming up with an approach that just naturally unifies all these things, and we'll see where this goes. That's one of the reasons why this smells like it might even work. Now, one of the things.
The one that showed those branching.
You want to show what?
The branching clusters that he created. Just go back up a few.
Go back to the. Hold on.
They show the branches. Yeah, that.
So here he has, different branches here, all kinds of things. Here's a different way of displaying it. So he has, again, with relatively simple models of these graphs, that is the points or the nodes and the edges, he can come up with incredibly complicated phenomena. So he can have things happening over here and things happening over here, and there's no relationship between the two, or in fact, they're coupled in some way that we can't quite see. We can see that all of these things here seem to be coupled in some way. So he has a very rich way to go characterize all of these trains of thought that are happening here. Is this what you wanted to cover? And so it goes. So the other thing to keep in mind, let me just go back here, is he doesn't have anything in here for this dark matter, which is what Ron Cowan observed. He does realize that after 500 years of scientific advancement, they've only been studying 5% of the universe, which is that much is made up of matter. and the other 95%, they don't know what to do with. And here's where Ron's contribution came in, was he looked at what we would call dark matter and realized that these are things that make up our chakras, that are everywhere. Remember, just by looking at these numbers, 5% and 27%, there's 5 times as much dark matter as there is matter. So therefore, it's like all over the place. Where is it? Well, it's in each of us as our soul, but it's also, you know, in blades of grass that you see out there, or in trees, or all of these different things. But as far as Wolfram is concerned, this is just really a detail. He can handle matter by building a set of hypergraphs for it, and with a set of rules, and he can put dark matter into a second subspace of 10 dimensions. So he has all the hooks for being able to deal with this stuff. It's not out of the question. And the other thing that we've got here is these, the fact that a lot of these dimensions, 18 of them are in fact compactified. We have a 6-dimensional manifold in our 10-dimensional space that's all compactified that we can't see. One way to think about this is, I was trying to come up with a way, is suppose I think of one dimension, say it's or call it the x-axis. So just think of a line, one-dimensional line running here. What we have wrapped around it, think of it as wrapped around that as a second little piece of paper, okay? And that's actually one of the compactified dimensions. So my x dimension that I see is here, but wrapped around it is this other dimension, which is in this totally different subspace that is so small I can't see it. But if I got really close to this and started to look at it, I could open it up and I would see that's also one dimension, just like this one is here. I'm just trying to give you a feel for what compactified means.
You have some good graphics for that.
Yeah, well, we have graphics, but I'm just saying, ultimately, what does compactified mean? Where did it go? Okay. Another thing to keep in mind was mathematicians have looked at these so-called Calabi-Yau manifolds, and it appears that they can come up with maybe 10,000 of them total. So the entire, universe, we said, is made up of 3 of them. Maybe there's some deeper relationship between the 3 and the 10,000 that are here that Wolfram is onto. Again, I'm just trying to point this out. Ron Cowan did a huge amount of work in dealing with these things, and which we tried to cover elsewhere. And Wolfram has all the things in his toolkit, in his Wolfram language, to be able to capture all of this stuff that Ron did. And so this is just summarizing a lot of these things. Here's our favorite picture showing what's going on here. And this is where Wolfram, I believe, will end up at the end of the day.
And show the Calabi-Yau manifold.
I didn't put one into this.
Oh, you should have.
Hold on, let me see what I got over here. I got one other thing. No, I don't have it. I don't have it. The other thing that came up here that Ron Cowan saw was that ultimately, even though quantum mechanics looks to be involving some element of randomness, that in fact it's a very deterministic mechanism here. And this led to what are called pilot waves that Ron observed, that Louis de Broglie, who's a French Nobel laureate, and David Bohm actually wrote a paper on a theory of quantum mechanics that was completely deterministic using pilot waves. And Ron saw this as information that is scanning everything around it. And it's in the walls of the compartments of space, and it covers all of the different particles that we see, such as electrons or these subquarks or protons or neutrons, and so forth. And this is really the collective unconscious that drives everything, which Wolfram is coming up with. These are just the things that I summarized out of the movie. The thing that was intriguing to me was that Wolfram was able to handle causality by coming up with graphs that were actually updated. Every time they were updated, everything in the graph that needed to be updated was updated. And he could actually do this with multiple pathways or multiple threads here, which leads to this collective unconscious where everything that's out there is being sensed. All possible outcomes are being sensed, and so it goes. So all of this is captured in what Wolfram's done. This is just a different picture of our universe, showing how central this information that controls everything. The information actually controls the fields and the forces that we see, and so forth. And
We're going
yeah,
to do an
that's-
animation of
that's,
that
yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah, so with that, I'm gonna send this out as a handout. So I'm trying to just encompass what we saw from what Wolfram said with what we've already covered, with what Ron has covered as well. And we will see where all this goes, but we're not there yet, but it seems like we're getting toward the end of the beginning, that we're starting to see there's a chance to actually have some sort of overarching theory, which might be much simpler than anyone realized, that actually describes what we see all around us. And this to me is a tip-off that there's an incredible artist at work here that's done all this. These are not accidental things that have happened by any stretch of the imagination. Just to start with, how could I ever make this stuff up? It's impossible. So with that,
It's a kind of indirect portrait of God, I think.
yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, we're at 9 o'clock, so
But
I'm sensitive. Any questions? Anything?
Footprints in the sand.
I
Yeah,
have a question.
yeah.
Wolfram in last week's thing that you showed mentioned 2.1 dimensions, and we talk about 26 dimensions. I have an easy time conceptualizing 4 dimensions because that's the world I live in. When we talk about any dimensions beyond that, I don't even know how to begin to conceptualize that. I mean, it's just
Well, the conceptualization, remember, a dimension is simply, I'm going to take 26 numbers, and that describes the coordinate of a point in a 26-dimensional space. Okay, so I have 26 axes. Okay, and I pick out a point somewhere in the space. It requires 26 numbers to go do that. That's the simple part. The hard part is that, as you just pointed out, 4 of those dimensions you see the time and you see the 3 for space around you. Okay, and then how in the world do these the stark matter that makes up our chakras, how in the world is that kind of coupled to us? And it's in a totally separate subspace of another 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, very much synced with us, but it is. Okay, so I have no way, and then everything else is compactified. Everything else is very teeny. So I don't have anything more to say other than this is what it looks like. It's really, two four-dimensional subspaces that are basically perpendicular to one another, if you can believe that.
Well, those images, they look almost like faceted bubbles or something. Is the Australian,
True.
the guy that is sort of doing the
Oh, the guy that,
videos on.
yeah,
Is he
his name
English?
is Mark Jeremy, I think it is. Whatever. Yeah,
Those images that he showed, that they look almost like facets of bubbles or something. With the
Yeah.
branching possibilities. I thought that was a pretty good approximation of what it might, quote unquote, look like. And I mean, maybe our vision isn't
Yeah, well,
the right thing to perceive it with.
yeah, but Steve's point is that, we can see, 3 dimensions around us, and time is time.
Right.
And 26 is like so much more complicated. You're scrambling yourself going, what in the world is going on here? Why in the world do I even need 26? Is a tip off that someone picked a set of rules that require something like this. And we still don't know why.
Well, Bart,
Just to-
go ahead.
But just to give you another example of another dimension, I was born telepathic, and it's just a natural phenomena that's there, and it happens all the time, more or less. But for example, if you're in the same room or same space as somebody who else is telepathic, as soon as you go into the same space, you connect instantly already.
Yeah, that's because the telepathy is going into these compactified dimensions.
Yeah.
And in the compactified dimensions, the speed of light is not limited to what it is in the space that we're in. It's instantaneous.
I
Okay.
don't get that a telepathic experience has
Well-
anything whatsoever to do with another dimension.
Well, it's a sense. You have eyes, you have ears, you can, you can see, that's how you sense the 3 dimensions around you. Well, where does telepathy fit in? It's a totally different sense. So it must be in a different dimension.
It's just an example, just it doesn't fit into any other dimensions.
No, it's
Well, it has to do with the concept of things being folded up. That they seem really far apart. And the dimensions seem like, well, the other side of Andromeda, but if they're folded up, then they're just like, if they fold up jeans, if you spread them out, they're how many miles long? But when they're folded up, it's like a centimeter apart.
You have 50 trillion cells in your body on that order of magnitude, and each cell has
DNA.
two strands of DNA that is 2 meters long, but it folds up into something that's, boy, oh boy, 10 to the minus 4 meters, 10 to the minus 5 meters, something like that.
So it's compactified, you could say.
Yeah. So, but
it's still within our 3-dimensional reality.
Right.
The thing is that we are communicating, over the internet. Is the internet another dimension? I don't think so. Well, why is that any different than communicating telepathically? It's just another mechanism for communications. I don't see how that equals a dimension.
Some people say it's a prosthesis for communicating.
It simply is. We can't detect it. If we were able to build a telepathy antenna meter, it would have to operate in one of these other compactified dimensions. And we don't have one right now. That's why people don't have any photos of chakras. Is they're actually in this other subspace. And so that you have all these pictures, but where's a photo? There isn't any photo.
Well, you know, I'm not particularly knowledgeable in this area, but if what you're trying to take a photo of is sensitive to certain wavelengths, and this is at a completely different wavelength, it's not going to show up in a photo. You need something that's sensitive to the wavelength of that particular item
Right.
in order to see it. So, you know,
Yeah, but I'm saying it isn't simply the wavelength. The wavelengths would be in our subspace. The chakras are in this totally separate four-dimensional subspace, totally separate. So we're not even in the same room, yet we are. Okay.
Yep. Well,
I'll try and come up with something better than this, because this is a
Okay.
good point.
but for example,
Our model is the problem.
Oh, go ahead, Bruce.
like for example, one of the qualities of telepathy is that when a lot of things happen, a lot of dimensions happen and understandings, but there's a whole pile of nonverbal understandings that come with it. You have understandings of the mind and a lot of things that are simply part of it. And it's very different. And it has a whole realm of understanding that's very vivid and very clear. And it's just all there. It just kind of happens. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, remember there are 18 of these compactified dimensions, and so you're sharing. It's a very rich experience that you're having there in these 18 other dimensions. That's what Bruce is talking about. So let me give it some thought. Steve's got a very good point. We'll try and come up with better ways to try and explain this. And I would propose we call it a night. It's 9:08. Is that okay? See everybody next week.
Same
Thank
bat
you.
channel,
Okay.
same bat time.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Okay.
Have a good 4th of July.
Yeah.
Have a good, Dominion Day, whatever. No, they don't call it Dominion, they call it Canada.
Canada Day. It's Canada Day.
Yeah,
Happy Independence
Yeah.
Day.
yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya. Bye.